Welcome out of the blue number 9. So, I want to make clear from the beginning that there are a lot of ways out. Anyway, there are a lot of ways out of what I'm about to tell you. Because I do not want to give the impression of being a fire and brimstone type preacher. And I don't want to give the impression of trying to use fear to motivate. So, what I'm about to lay on you is not so much about fear as it is about the facts of life. What I'm talking about is the near-death experience. I've been reading about near-death experiences for about 15 years. And there's a lot of things that can be gleaned from this information. And but first of all, it must be made clear that one of the complaints people have about near-death experiences is that the person who's here to tell about it, if they're here to tell about it, they weren't really dead. Okay, dead means you don't come back and tell about it. And so, even though their heart stopped, their functions ceased, it doesn't count as dead unless they're actually permanently dead. And so I accept that. I agree with that. And once you agree with that, you have to say, well, then this experience that this person is recounting, this intense experience, this vivid experience, is a part of life. If they're not dead, then, therefore, the experience they had is a part of life. So, what I'm talking about is not, I'm not framing it as literally going to an afterlife. I'm talking about this as something that is an experience within our life. It is a part of life. That's what I mean by saying it is a fact of life. Like it or not. It's just something that can be shown to exist and can be shown to be consistent. So, we'll get more into that now, but as for ways out, as I said earlier, it can be shown to be consistent, but the consistency is nowhere near 100%. So, there's plenty of reasons to disregard this information. One of them being that the consistent kind of experience is less than 30%, maybe around 20%, but it's more than 1%. So it can be disregarded because odds are it's not something you will experience. So statistically, the near-death experience, when they revive somebody after having their heart having stopped, most people don't report anything. Some people report vague, kind of nebulous, disoriented experience. And some people report this, what's become known as this textbook NDE, near-death experience, floating from the body, tunnel of light, City of Light, Meeting Dead Relatives, Life Review, etc. And that is a small percentage, but it is a consistent percentage. And so, being consistent like that is something that can be studied, and has been studied for a long time. Now, there are some people who conclude that this proves the afterlife. And I am not one of those people. Swedenborg, by now you might have heard of Neo-Swedenborgianism, or Neo-Sweo, as it's sometimes called. Swedenborg believed it was a real place. Neo-Swedenborgianism does not, because Neo-Swedenborgianism, or Neo-Sweo, is not a belief. There's no faith, there's no belief required. So, it can't be proven to be a real place. So therefore, it is out of our purview. But what can be shown is that it's consistent. It's a consistent human experience. And it is an experience that you have a chance of experiencing yourself. And as a round number that is conservative but defensible, I generally say you have a 5% chance of experiencing it. So, what we do is we look into it, we examine it, and we just see what it is we can expect. And before I go on, now, some might say it's a subjective experience. It's not an objective experience that can be examined. It only happens to you. So it's sort of like a drug. It's a drug. I'm talking about dying, basically. It's like a drug that's on your horizon, and your experience will be purely subjective. And what may it be like? Maybe it might be nothingness. Maybe it might be some vague, nebulous fading out. Maybe it might be something that we can't predict and we don't know. So if it is nothingness, if it is a vague, nebulous fading out, or if it is something that we don't know and can't predict, there's nothing really more to talk about. This 5% chance you have of having this consistent NDE type experience can be talked about. So that's what we're going to talk about, because that's really all that we can examine. Now, this consistency that exists in this 5% is very similar to the descriptions in Swedenborg of heaven and hell, and even of dying. Swedenborg talks about what it's like to die in the 1770s, and then when we get to the 1970s, these near-death experiencers say a similar thing. So, one way of explaining this is that Swedenborg was able to access the experience in the mind, and the place in the mind wherever a person goes on their deathbed. He was able to access that place, that state of mind. Now, this is Neo-Swedenborgianism is not supernatural. So a person of a faith might explain it otherwise. They would say, like Swedenborg did, he went to heaven and hell and saw it. It also resembles Summerland. The Celts believed in Summerland. It's all very similar. Where the sun always shines, cloudless day and all that. Willie Nelson sings about it. But if we are going to be rational, and we want to explain this, he was in his own mind. So this is the general premise of Neo-Swedenborgianism, is that what he perceived as heaven and hell, he was actually traveling within his own psyche. So, and now this is not an objective experience. He described what he saw, but the experience itself was absolutely subjective, as will your experience and my experience be. So what we're reading about and talking about and thinking about is, what is this subjective experience, which I have a real chance of experiencing, likely to be like, and how, if at all,
Thank you.
can I navigate it? Okay? And now, we are here in Chicago, and it is a matter of public record that the plan for the city of Chicago was drawn by Daniel Burnham, and Daniel Burnham grew up in a Swedenborgian household. So this is not a completely nebulous subject. So Chicago itself was designed with some inspiration by Swedenborg's description of heaven and hell. Or I guess of heaven, let's hope, right? Anyway, we are at another tree. Let's see what we got. So, the good news is that a wait-and-see approach to this subject makes perfect sense. The odds are in your favor that you'll never even experience it. But the bad news is that you cannot opt out due to belief, because we're not talking about belief. So a person might say, well, I don't believe in any of that, right? And what we're talking about is a statistical significance. We're talking about a positive correlation between culture and the NDE. There is no real correlation between belief and NDE. So a person cannot believe. Now, if you want to read a case like that, it's Howard Storm. He had an NDE that was contrary to his beliefs, but it was right in line with his culture. And so whether or not you believe in it is irrelevant, because we're not